everyone, it's Liz here. Apologies for the noise in the background. Our road is being dug up at the moment, and having gas pipe to put in, etc. So it's all that drilling all day doesn't really help, but anyway. So I thought I would do this video because this month, particularly, I think it was around the 10th of January, is my zebraversary, which, for anyone who doesn't know what a zebra is, then why are you watching this? Because it's the Potsie zebra. But no, most of you should know that a zebra is someone with hEDS. And I'm getting distracted because my cat is hunting a toy. Basically, it's 10 years this month that I got diagnosed with hEDS, which feels like, it's crazy because it feels like I've had it forever, which I have technically, but the diagnosis was 10 years ago. I remember it so clearly because I'd been the previous year, so I got diagnosed with hEDS January 2009, and I got diagnosed with POTS in October or November, I think, 2008. So I got the POTS thing first, and then got referred to the hEDS clinic at UCH in London. At that time, there was hardly any hEDS patients there. Professor Graham was the only... Professor Graham was there, but Dr. Kaz had just started and was learning about hEDS under Professor Graham's tuition. But now she's like the lead person and Professor Graham doesn't practice anymore. So it's like, wait, if he does, it's only private. But anyway, I've seen Professor Graham over the years. I've seen... Dr. Kaz diagnosed me. I've seen Dr... I can't remember her name, but someone else at UCH. And now I'm under Dr. Cohen at Stanmore. So it's been a journey. And I didn't really know what to do for my 10-year zebraversaries. It's not something I want to like celebrate and be like, woohoo. But it's not a bad thing either. And I thought I'd let you know the things I've learned over the last 10 years that might help you if you're newly diagnosed or you're in the first few years of diagnosis, because things in 10 years have changed massively. So I'll tell you what's changed. So in 2009, I was having like major symptoms for everything with my POTS and my hEDS, with pain and being on crutches on and off, and being in and out of hospital and having time off work. But in 2009, I was working. I didn't use a wheelchair. I wasn't on any medication for hEDS, like pain-wise. By then I think I was on Midodrine for POTS. That was literally it. And then later in 2010, in April, so a year and a bit later, I got gastroparesis diagnosed, which was found to be hEDS was causing it. And then the same year I got costochondritis diagnosed, which is where you get the pain on your sternum and into your ribs and around the back. No, that has never gone for me. Some doctors think it's a short-term condition, which it can be in those that don't have hEDS. But I find mine comes and goes. So sometimes I can sit for a while and sometimes I can't. Like, I don't know if you can see. Probably not. But I've got a pillow behind my head instead of wearing my neck collar today. And I am sitting in the most awkward position with my laptop on me. A very bad example of what you should not do. But as you can see, my lips are very sore and chapped. And just my mouth is sore all around the corners here. But anyway, so I've gained more diagnoses in the 10 years. Obviously last year, forget it's 2019 now. Last year, I gained a diagnosis of IBS, histamine intolerance, and mast cell activation disorder, and possible Sjögren's, which is being looked into now, as you would have seen in my last video. The year after I got diagnosed with EDS, I'd got so bad, I'd taken so much time off work. I actually had to quit my job in London. My housemate was moving out anyway, so the tenancy came to an end, and I moved back with my parents. So, because I found I was so stressed over work, looking back now, I should have done something about it, but my work were giving me more and more things to do when they knew I was struggling, and it was like pushing me out, but without me realising it, so I couldn't take legal action over it. So that was kind of annoying. But I had to stop work. And back then, I was about 28, so not very old. And that's the only job I'd ever had, apart from internships and things. So, for me, I knew it was the right thing to do because my body needed a rest. My body was completely wrecked from pushing and pushing and pushing. And actually, it was the end of 2011 I gave up my job because I moved back with my parents because I couldn't afford to live in London because I wasn't working full time. I was working 4 days a week, I think. So I was having Wednesdays off as like a rest day. And I was still feeling exhausted. I was driving to London every day, which for me was from Bedfordshire. So that's like 2 hours there, 2 hours back every single day, apart from Wednesdays. And it was just exhausting and my heart wasn't in it. And I started hating my employer and I started hating everything because I was too exhausted to do anything except for going to work, which became like for your social life. It just killed my social life completely. And yeah, so those 3 years even, 9, 10 and 2011 were really big years for me because diagnoses were like coming at me like flipping, like every single year I'd get a new diagnosis of something else that's going on in my body. And people I see a lot on EDS support groups ask, like, does it get worse as you get older? Do you find you get more, like, medications? Do you get more ill? And the answer is yes. I found I'm not old, I'm only 35, and I found since I've got older, it's got worse. And I've had surgeries, so many surgeries as well for other things. And because surgeries, when you've got EDS and POTS, aren't straightforward, I found that recovery time has been long. And then I get deconditioned and the cycle of going round and round, being deconditioned, then not feeling well enough to exercise, and then becoming more and more deconditioned, then getting better, then exercise and becoming conditioned and feeling great, then needing another operation, going through the whole cycle again, is just so frustrating. So that's one thing I've learned, is that there's a cycle that you just can't ever get out of. But the thing is, I do realise, and I always tell myself, when I'm in a really bad period, like now, for example, when things are really bad, I've always got out of it. Like in 2013, I had my appendix out and they couldn't find out what was wrong with me, but they took it out and that I got a lot better. And they think it was pushing against an ovary, which was causing the pain. And then the year after that, my gallbladder decided to just give up. And I had so many stones, I had to have my gallbladder out. And that year was horrible because it took 8 months for them from first getting diagnosed to having my gallbladder out. And I was just so ill for ages, and we just moved house. We moved here, actually. And I was just feeling just awful. And then as I got better, I got more healthier and exercise, and I started losing weight, and I just felt great. And then Then I put on weight because I felt so good. I started eating more because when you have gallstones, you can't eat anything fatty at all because it flares up a trigger, and I ended up in hospital every time. So I was literally eating next to nothing, which is what was happening now. And then it went good again, and then we got married and everything was good, and then it went bad because my sinuses were, I had the operation to correct my blocked sinuses and my bent nose, and then I got better again, and then I've got this, and as you can see, all this is like not a double chin, this is swelling, and it really hurts, and I've got a lump there at the moment, which is really hurting. So if I do have lupus or Sjogren's, then that's another thing to add. But in 10 years, I've learned just accept that if you don't get worse, appreciate life as much as you can and do whatever you can. Because I wish I'd have done a lot more with my life. I mean, I've done a hell of a lot, but I wish I'd done more if I'd have known this was coming, because I have got worse over the years, and my husband knows that I'm likely to get worse as I get older, and that's why we want to, if we're thinking about having kids, we do want to do it this year, because I can't see how I could look after a child if I was much worse. And once they figure out what's wrong with me now and they can get me better, then I can get recovered enough to be able to carry a child. But that might not even happen, we don't know. The other thing I've learned is that your friends and your family change so dramatically in 10 years. It massively has changed. Like my family, my mum's always been my number one, support. She's always believed in my symptoms. She's always been there to look after me. And in the beginning, when I first got diagnosed, everyone in my family pretty much didn't try and understand what was wrong with me, didn't really seem to care. My dad was the worst because I had CBT as a result, and it really massively helped because I realised that, he was basically acting like I was being over dramatic and all my symptoms were way more severe. So I was being over dramatic with them and they weren't as bad as what I was making out to be or whatever. And when I needed to get a manual wheelchair, firstly, so I could actually have days out again, he was really embarrassed to be seen with me in it, and he wouldn't push me in it, and he said I didn't need it, and he didn't ask how I was, and didn't come to any hospital appointments or anything. So yeah, it was really, really hard because I felt like, why does he not care? Why doesn't he believe? But then through CBT, I realised because he loved me so much that he didn't want to accept that I was ill and I wasn't going to get better, because there is no cure for EDS at the moment, for hEDS anyway, or any other type, but that's the one I have. That you can get, your symptoms can get better, but you can't physically get better because EDS, they don't know what the gene is that causes it. So, hEDS, I mean. And because of that, we know that physio and exercise and a healthy diet are the three main things that will help us to stay as best as we possibly can be. But at the same time, that's not always possible. For me at the moment, my diet is horrifically poor because I have one meal a day in the evening, which is protein, pretty much no vegetables and a few carbs. The only vegetables I can get is if I blend them, and I have them as a soup in the day, lunchtime, which I will have today. And that's it. Exercise I can't do because my neck hurts so much and I have all this jaw issue and everything hurts and I can't really walk very well. I keep falling, and not falling, but I go to fall and I have to hang on to things. So, when they say my physio is great, she'll do things, give me exercises to do when I'm lying down or sitting in my chair, which are possible to do. But some days I feel just exhausted and tired all the time, and that's because it could be this condition I've got. And and you don't feel like you want to do it. But the trouble is, when you get into the cycle of like, oh, I won't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow. And the next day you think, oh, well, actually, I can't do it today, I'll do it tomorrow. That happens over and over, and then you just don't do it at all, and you just give up. And it's just really frustrating. And I've learned you must do your physio, because the times where I've stuck to doing physio and I've stuck to, like, if it's for my shoulder and I've been given specific exercises and I do them every day, then my shoulder's got better. But if I haven't done them every day, my shoulder just takes forever to get better, or not at all. So, yeah, it's quite a tricky one. I'm just looking to see my notes. Family. I haven't finished family. So my dad was like a really difficult one. And then the rest of my family, my dad's family are like in Wales, and they were like, it was harder for them to see the change in me because they didn't see me often. In fact, I think I went for about 6 years of not seeing them. And then it was suddenly like, whoa, okay, there's a major change. But my mum would send them information leaflets, and I think they would read them, but they would never ask anything, and they would never... I just felt like when I was telling them what was wrong, they didn't really understand, and they didn't really want to try and understand. And for me, that was a big hurdle that the CBT helped me with. Why people didn't want to know. Because if someone was to tell me they had Parkinson's or cancer or they had MS, I would know what that was, and I'd know that that was a serious thing, and I'd ask them how it affected them and how they felt, and I'd look up on it if it was a particular type of something. But I felt like with me, when I got diagnosed, nobody cared. Nobody wanted to know what EDS was. They didn't want to know the symptoms. They didn't want to know how it would affect me in the future. They didn't want to know anything about it because they never heard of it. And that pattern followed through to my friends as well. My friends at work stopped being in contact with me. They stopped asking me out to parties and stuff because I usually said no. But there were times I would feel okay, and I just felt really... like unwelcome, and not like I'd find out there'd been a party and I hadn't been invited, I'd feel really sad. And like my friends at home, I had a handful of friends who were really lovely and I still am friends with, but then I had like even best friends, 2 best friends I've lost in 10 years. One because she was like, she'd been fairly ill herself in the past, but she ironically was training to be a physio at university, and there came a day where I'd had a really bad day, and I was just like, oh, and she came online, I was like, oh, I've had a really bad day, blah blah blah, telling her about how I got caught in the rain, I'd been to hospital for tests, and it was really horrible tests as well, and all she said was, why do you keep having tests if they don't find anything, why if they don't help you, and blah blah, and I was just like, she's always never asked me. And being a physio is the main treatment for EDS. She should have been more understanding. She didn't ever once ask me what EDS was in the 10 years that I've been diagnosed. She didn't know the symptoms. She thought I was a hypochondriac, which she herself was, many, many times. She didn't really care. And she said, where's the old you gone? You used to be so fun. And I'm thinking, what? Like, if you actually spent time with me, then you'd understand why I wasn't as fun. But the fact that I do still do stuff, I go to the cinema, I go to comedy nights, I go to concerts, I go to London, I go shopping, I do stuff, fun stuff. And I've done loads of things from home. But she never asks about that. She just, every time we'd speak, she'd just go on about her worries and her failing relationships and things like that. And she was really jealous, I think, when I found Adam, my husband now, because we've stayed together. It's worked, and yeah, it was just crazy. And then another friend I lost, I have no idea why. I mean, she got diagnosed with a chronic illness, and I think she just didn't want to be around anyone else with chronic illness. It was just really odd, because in the beginning she said that she didn't want to talk about her illness and she wouldn't let it beat her, and so I never asked her if she was okay or what was going on, because she'd said she didn't want to talk about it. So I didn't talk about it. And then she just didn't reply to any messages for ages. And then I saw her and we were fine. I asked her to be a bridesmaid because we'd been friends our entire lives. when me and Adam got married. And she said no. And then she basically said that only friends that you can see a future with would be bridesmaids. And I was like, what? Like, seriously? Like, and we had this massive falling out. And I asked her what I'd done. And she just never ever replied. And in the 4 years that we've been... No, hang on. 2, 3... I don't know, 3 or 4 years that we haven't talked or seen each other. She's never once told me what happened. Like, I never said anything to her. And if I did, she hasn't said, oh, you said this and that made me upset, so therefore I'm not going to talk to you. It was just so petty. It was stupid. So I've learnt that just don't worry. Keep a small handful of friends who you know is going to be there if you need them, but also you'll be there for them. And that it works both ways. You can't just expect your friends to always be there because they might need you to. And I feel like you learn who your friends are, because some people who were like, I hadn't known long but were friends, just seem to just disappear, or they'd make a snarky comment on Facebook and I'd be like, you're unfriended, I don't need to know you. Because I learnt through CBT, just cut out the negativity. You have enough to deal with having EDS and POTS and having to cope with life. And like for me, I had to quit my job. I had to move back with my parents. I had to give up all the things I loved. Then when I got my gastro issues, I had to give up all the food I loved. You have to give up so much. And then when you figure out, oh, you're not going to work ever again, you're not going to be able to do this ever again, some things you will be able to do, but some things you physically can't. And people go, oh, you will be able to do that. Think, well, no, if you knew what EDS was, like, no. Because one of my dreams is to go kite surfing, learn how to kite surf. The only one with EDS knows, A, my shoulders would get yanked out of joint all the time. B, being in the water, like in the sea, for so long, I get too cold. Especially as I have issues with regulating my body temperature. It just would not be practical or work, and I could end up in hospital or spend months recovering. It's like people say go swimming. It's like, I love swimming and it's a great form of exercise, but it takes me a week to recover, and my quality of life therefore is worse because in that whole week I can't do anything. Whereas if I don't go swimming, I can do little bits of exercise at home and have a whole week of doing different things. So yeah, so a lot of my close friends now are people with EDS and POTS because they understand. We don't just talk about our illnesses, we talk about our lives, our hobbies, the fun things we do. We often find we have a lot in common. So don't worry if you lose your friends, because you'll gain better friends through these support groups, and I found that to be really helpful. And just don't give up. Like, I've got to the stage now where I know I can't go back to work. And so I occupy my time at home. Like, I do the Hospital Genie website. I chill out. I help run a POTS support group. I volunteer for EDS UK. And that's enough for me, because if I take on too much, then you do end up having to bow out of certain activities, and then that makes you feel guilty and bad, and you don't want that. Just to avoid you feeling like that, just don't put yourself in that situation in the first place. Yeah, and also I've learned that don't expect much from any doctors except for the really good EDS ones like Professor Graham. Sorry, I'm going to have to move. There I am. Or Dr. Cohen, because I have had more bad experiences than good with my EDS, whether it's GP surgery, hospitals, A&E, specialists, anywhere. I've had so many bad experiences I could write a book. But when you have a good experience, it's a relief, because like recently, my GP for the last 3-4 months, whatever it is, has said, no, there's nothing wrong. Oh, well, let's wait and see. I'm not going to help. And then see my rheumatologist 2 weeks ago, And she's like, right, I can't believe this hasn't been done, that hasn't been done. You can have a scan, you can have blood tests, you can have this, that, referral to a lupus clinic, like all these things, because she knows what EDS is. And EDS is something everyone should know what it is. And it's so common. People think it's not, but it's like 1 in 3,000, I think. I think it's 1 in 3,000 people have it. So that is not very common, but it's fairly common. It's not rare. It used to be called a rare illness, but it's certainly not rare. And the other thing I wish people would learn is there's not these types 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. They reclassified them in April 2017. So that's nearly 2 years ago, and they don't have a number. Like, I was diagnosed with EDS type 3. But now I don't say that I've got EDS type 3. I say I've got hEDS, because that's the equivalent. If a doctor in either last year or this year is diagnosing you still using the number system, like type 1, type 2, type 3, they haven't read the GP toolkit on EDS information that is out there. They haven't read the new criteria. So it just annoys me. I have so many mostly A&E is the worst place I've had bad experiences. Just like, they won't see past my wheelchair, so they'll think, oh, well, she's in a wheelchair, she can wait longer because she doesn't have to move anywhere. Like, if I've hurt my knee, they say, oh, you're in a wheelchair, you don't need, anything. I think, well, I can't spend my life in my wheelchair. I go around outside in it, but I can't go around in my bungalow in it because there's not enough room. So if I hurt my knee, therefore I can't use my crutches. And like, once I was sent away from A&E with torn ligaments in my knee, the whole of my knee, and they said I needed a support but didn't give me one and sent me home. They expected me to go out and buy one, and I was just like, what? You're entrusting someone to get the right one. I could have bought the wrong one, but luckily I did my research. I've gone to A&E and told to go home because there's nothing wrong with me. I've been told, because I'm already under specialists on waiting tests, that that I should wait and see the specialists. I mean, like, in December, I went to A&E because I couldn't speak. My jaw had swollen so much. My GP said, go to A&E if you get worse. I went to A&E and they sent me home because they said, oh, you're waiting for this, I'm waiting for that. We can't do those things here. Like, they could have admitted me and done it. I've had that in the past. I had a slipped disc. I knew I had a slipped disc. I went into the A&E with slipped disc pain. They kept me in for pain management, and they did another MRI to see if it was worse while I was in worse pain. But now with my jaw, they could have kept me in and done tests, and I could have been treated by now. So I always go into an appointment, or whether it's emergency, A&E, GP, whatever it is, with no shade of positivity at all. And if something good comes out of it, great, because then you can't be disappointed if you don't expect anything from it. It sounds negative, but it's not, because so many people I know have had the same experience with the EDS and their POTS, because you'll say to someone, oh, I've got EDS. And they'll either say, oh, yes, that's where you're bendy. That's literally all they know about it. Whereas EDS is far from just being bendy, as we all know. Or they just won't know what it is at all. And they will just be like, won't look it up. They won't even bother. And they'll try and give you something that makes your EDS worse. Like, I was once told to go and lift weights at a gym after I'd had a calcified lump on my shoulder and I was put in a sling. I was like, if I was to lift weights in a gym, I would do serious damage to my muscles because they're deconditioned. No. And get a good physio. That's the other thing. Physio is important for EDS. To have a physio that knows what EDS is, and POTS, possibly, if you have issues standing like me. Because they can give you the worst advice. I know people who've been to physios who've made them worse. So get a good physio who knows what EDS is or is willing to learn what it is, because they will be your rock. I've had the same physio for 2-3 years now. She's amazing. She's good. She's pretty much sorted me where I don't have it regularly, but if I injure myself, I'm off to her again. You know, I'll tear my shoulder, I'll go to her. I'll tear my knee, I'll go to her. My hips are hurting, I'll go to her. Because I need to kick up the bum when it comes to physio, as most people with EDS do, because we aren't very good at doing it. But that's what I've learned, and 10 years has gone slowly because so much has happened. It feels like 20 years since I was diagnosed, but who knows? I will obviously, if YouTube still is going in another 10 years, I'll do another 10-year update, because I mean, a lot more's happened in that 10 years, but that's just a rough outline of what's happened. My diagnosis is the things that have happened to me. And obviously now I use a powered wheelchair. I can't go out without it. That's a massive change to 10 years ago. I can't stand up for long because my Potsie's worse. My joints are worse. I fall over a lot more. And it's because of all these extra new diagnoses. And a lot of people say, well, like my friend who's no longer my friend, what's the point of getting all these diagnoses if they can't make you better? It's because then if you have the diagnoses, some people might not be able to work because of it. So if they have a diagnosis, it helps them qualify to get help with money because they can't work. 2, it helps to give you the right treatment if there's medication to help with either pain or swelling or whatever the illness is. There's usually medication for it. And the other thing is that to know not what not to give. So for me, I can't have anything with codeine in because it makes my heart rate go crazy because my POTS. But if they didn't know I had POTS, they'd give it to me and I wouldn't know why I felt really ill. I can't have certain antibiotics because of my mast cell. I'm allergic to so many medications. So that's another thing. There's loads of things. But 10 years has gone by and there's been a huge positive change in support. That's the only thing that's got better. Is when I got diagnosed, there was like an online website that had a forum that no one used on the EDS UK website. And now there's regional support groups. I run one of them in my area in Cambridgeshire. We have a helpline for EDS UK. We have amazing doctors. There's more and more doctors now. Even for children, get to diagnose EDS in the UK. We have Lara, who's amazing, who heads up the Ehlers-Danlos Society as well. And they got a massive grant of money to do research into finding the gene responsible for hEDS. So possibly in the next 10 years, we might even know what the gene responsible is. There's a lot more awareness. There's a lot more people. I know people, if not thousands of people. So, yeah, it's crazy. Who've got EDS. So, anyway, that's it for now. My throat is killing me. Another downside of having EDS, but I'm going to get a drink and some lunch. And I hope that you've enjoyed maybe taking something away from this, getting some tips from life. 10 years with EDS, really. That's it from me now. Bye.